really, really nervous if I'm a Cavs fan, but when you put all those pieces together, yes, they can compete with anybody in the East because every other team in the East also is just as flawed as Cleveland.
But did you just say those two big guys beating up on people? You see how skinny they ain't beating up on nobody.
They beat up on Atlanta last night. They can beat, like Jared Allen is a big dude. I know he's a little wiry, but he's a tall dude.
Tall dude.
19 rebounds, nothing to sniff at. Those two guys are going to have to play big in the East to win.
I understand from a talent perspective. You look at their talent. They can talk about hitting the high note. Their high note, when Donovan Mitchell is there, if James Harden is spraying the ball around, Evan Mobley, who I call Slim Duncan, because I just feel like he has that much potential. I'm with you.
Slim Duncan like Tim Duncan?
Slim Duncan.
Like Tim Duncan. A little too much dip in the chip. I like Evan Mobley, too. That's a little dip in the chip. But
well, it's a big difference between being Tim Duncan and not, and he's just slimmer. That's all.
All right, okay.
So my point is, they have more questions than any other team in the East. Detroit has the question of secondary scoring. Boston has the question of, do you have enough experience outside of Tatum and Brown with all these guys that they've had to replace? New York has the Karl Anthony Towns question. Cleveland has the, what's James Harden going to do late in the playoff series? Donovan Mitchell hasn't shown up in the conference finals. They're two big dudes or skinny dudes. And Kenny Atkinson, this is the other thing I want to focus on. The Cleveland Cavaliers have transparently said to everybody, we were looking at the brackets. We think it would be easier to play the Detroit Pistons in round 2 than to play the Celtics in round 2. So you mean to tell me that on Al Gore's internet, that they went out and telegraphed to the team that lives off of spite that you want to play them, that you're telling the team that specializes, that majors in physicality, and you don't, that you want to play them? I don't know if I'd want to be saying that out loud. I might let the chips fall where they may, and so be it, and say, well, maybe we can out-talent Detroit or whatever the case may be. But I'm not telling Detroit I want to play them, and I think those things can turn back to bite you in the playoffs.
So the 3-4 seed here, I mentioned it. The Pistons are a half game behind New York right now for the 3 seed. As you look at those two,
Cleveland's half a game behind.
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Who should want that? Like the 3-4 battle, as you've just laid out there, and we're looking at the first, second round of the playoffs and who they could eventually meet. What are the Cavs better as a 3 seed? Are they better as the 4 seed? What's the better matchup for them?
Well, I think New York wants.
The Cleveland Cavaliers have a problem, and it is not a small problem. It is not a maybe we will figure it out in the playoffs problem. It is a James Harden in Game 6 and Game 7 problem. And Stephen A. Smith just said what every NBA fan already knows but no one wants to admit out loud. Let me set the scene for you. The Cavs beat the Hawks last night. Donovan Mitchell had 31. James Harden added 21. Evan Mobley put in 22. They look good on paper. But Stephen A. started the conversation by saying the Cavs are a legitimate contender, but then he immediately listed the flaws. He said he has real concerns with James Harden come Game 6 and Game 7. He has real concerns with them defensively because their defense has fallen off a cliff since James Harden has been there. And then David Dennis Jr. dropped a stat that should terrify every Cavs fan. Since Harden joined the team on February 7th, the Cavs are 13-14 in clutch time. 13-14. That is not a championship number. That is a we cannot close out games number. And we all know the narrative around James Harden in the postseason. We have seen his movies. Game 6 in Houston against the Spurs when he disappeared. Game 7 against the Warriors when he had more turnovers than made field goals in the second half. The list goes on. And now the Cavs are depending on him to be a facilitator in the playoffs, to set up Mobley and Allen and then turn it over to Denova. And Mitchell? That is a lot of faith in a guy who has built his entire reputation on regular season greatness and postseason disappearance. But here is where Stephen A. really went off. He started talking about the Cavs potentially wanting to face the Pistons in the second round instead of the Celtics. And he said something that stopped me cold. He said the Cavs have transparently said to everybody that they think it would be easier to play the Detroit Pistons in round 2 than to play the Celtics. And Stephen A. asked, on Al Gore's internet, you are going to telegraph to the team that lives off of spite that you want to play them? You are telling the team that specializes in physicality that you want to play them? I do not know if I would want to be saying that out loud. And he is right. The Pistons are not a team you want to poke. They are not a team you want to give extra motivation. They have reclaimed their defensive identity. They have guys who will make you play less than your best. And now you are telling them you think they are the easier matchup? That is how you get swept. That is how you become the highlight of someone else's championship run. But let me go back to the defense because that is the real issue here. Vince Goodwill pointed out that the Cavs' two big guys, Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, are skinny dudes. He said they are not beating up on anybody. David Dennis pushed back and said Jarrett Allen is a big dude. 19 rebounds is nothing to sniff at. But Ince's point stands. When you look at the East, you have physical teams. The Pistons play nasty defense. The Knicks play bully ball. The Celtics have size and experience. And the Cavs? They have two skinny bigs and two guards who do not play defense. That is a problem. Stephen A. even mentioned that their defense has fallen off a cliff since Harden arrived. And that makes sense because Harden has never been known for his defense. Donovan Mitchell tries, but he is not a lockdown guy. So who is protecting the rim? Who is rotating when the guards get beat? That is supposed to be Mobley and Allen. But if they are too skinny, if they cannot hold up against the physicality of a playoff series, the Cavs are in trouble. And then you add the James Harden clutch time problem. 13 and 14 since he joined. That is not a small sample size anymore. That is over 2 months of basketball. The Cavs are losing close games because they cannot execute down the stretch. And in the playoffs, every game is a close game. Every game comes down to the last 5 minutes. If you are 13 and 14 in clutch time during the regular season, what do you think is going to happen in the playoffs when the pressure is 10 times higher? The answer is not good. David Dennis tried to put a positive spin on it. He said the good thing about the Cavs is you are not dependent on James Harden to give you 40 in a Game 6 or Game 7. You are asking him to be a facilitator, to set up Mobley and Len, and then turn it over to Donovan Mitchell. That sounds nice. But here is the problem. Donovan Mitchell has never gotten past the second round either. He is one of the last great players who has not made a conference finals. So now you have two guys with playoff failure on their resumes, two skinny bigs, and a defense that has fallen off. That is not a championship recipe. That is a second-round exit recipe. And Stephen A. is right to be concerned. The Cavs can score with anyone. Mitchell and Harden are two of the most talented offensive players of their generation. But the playoffs are not about talent. The playoffs are about execution, about defense, about closing games. And the Cavs have proven they cannot do any of those things consistently. So here is my question for you. Are the Cleveland Cavs a legitimate title contender, or are they a second-round exit waiting to happen? Drop your take in the comments. Do you agree with Stephen A. Smith, or do you think I am being too hard on James Harden and the Cavs? And if you want more honest breakdowns of what is really happening in the NBA playoffs, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.